Hello again. In the previous tutorial we looked at how to use a skeletal mesh using the default humanoid rig from Epic to change the skeletal mesh of a unit and animate it. In this tutorial we will look at how to change this to using a different sort of skeletal mesh. For this I am using the Infinity Blade Adversaries pack that is provided for free by Epic. There's a link in the description. More specifically, I will be using the enemy bear. Now this guy is clearly not humanoid and he comes with a lot of great animations, some fairly dramatic ones, and yeah, lots of different stuff that we can work with. So let's create a new unit again, as we did in the last tutorial. Let's go to the unit here, and we can again create a duplicate of BP unit anim, and this time let's call it BP unit and bear. And let's look at this guy. So if we now go to the mesh as we did last time, and we can change the mesh then to our bear. Here we are. So and like changing to the ABP unit is not going to do it this time, and we can't just retarget this bear skeletal mesh. Let's see. I mean, we can assign a new skeleton and so on, but because it's based on a completely different skeleton, within the model we have a different skeleton, that's certainly not going to look good. So we can't do the same way here with retargeting as we did last time. So what do we do instead? Well, we need to make a new animation blueprint that uses the different skeletal mesh that we have here. And we cannot just create a duplicate of the ABP unit animation blueprint, because the animation blueprints are directly tied to a specific skeletal mesh, or at least I have not been able to find a way. But setting it up manually is pretty easy anyway. So let's just create then a new animation and then animation blueprint. Let's see. Yeah, I'm blind. There we are. And we will base this on the bear skeleton, so the bear export skeleton. I mean, we could go to the skeleton mesh, check what mesh it's using, but I think we can be pretty safe in assuming that the bear export skeleton is the one we want. So let's go for this. ABP. Oh, quick save. Stopped my renaming. So ABP unit. Oops. Difficult to type in front of my weird microphone setup here. Okay, so ABP unit bear, and this is of course a very basic animation blueprint with just the basics that you start with. So it's a bit tedious to build everything from scratch here, since we want to use a lot of the same stuff anyway. So we want to start with this as a base, but we can't duplicate it, so we just need to copy stuff over directly and then see what goes wrong and fix it from there. It's a tried and true method with blueprints sometimes. Okay, so let's just delete this stuff and paste in what we have. And if we compile, we should get some errors, and indeed we do. So let's see here. At the start of at begin play for the animation blueprint, we set up a reference to the unit that is controlling this animation blueprint, and we do not have a reference variable for this setup here yet, so this is as simple as right clicking and creating a variable, and we can really do this for all the other variables that are here. Do the same thing, just create them. Let's see, and let's compile, and we still have no attack variable. And there it is. So it's compiled. That does of course not mean that it's working, so we'll need to look a bit further. So one thing to really keep in mind if you're ever manually copying over stuff like this is the event names. We can see that this is named custom event 1, and this is certainly not what it was named here, as we had something else entirely. So what happened here is that this animation blueprint ABP unit, it is implementing an a blueprint interface, and this interface is used by the unit blueprint to tell the animation blueprint what to do, and it's set up as an interface instead of a regular event, so that it can be called in any number of different blueprints, which is what we want to do now. So that's perfect for us. If you don't know how blueprint interfaces work, I recommend looking at a tutorial on that. I've not made one myself, but there are many available, and I'll be sure to link one of the good ones in the description below. But anyways, we will need to implement the blueprint interface for our bear animation blueprint here. So let's look at the blueprint, and the blueprint, let's see, is it the details? No, it's the, I guess, the class settings. Yeah, so we have no interfaces, and we want to add a specific interface. What interface do we want to add? Let's look at the ABP unit and its settings. This is BPI animate unit. Okay, so animate, and there it is. So now that we have this interface, we should be able to find the animate movement interface function. Let's see. If we need to call it, let's see, event animate movement, there it is. And now we should be able to interface with this animation blueprint. Now that we have added the interface, it should also be possible to just copy this over directly, and it works. So if you just added the interface before copying, then you don't have to do any of the tedious replacements. Okay, so we have a bunch of different nodes now, and they can interact with the unit blueprint and all of that, but they do absolutely nothing because they are not yet set up to work along with the animations of this bear. So that's the next step we will need to look at. But yeah, before going to that, let's explain a bit what each of these does. So like I said, the first one here, setting up a reference. The second one here is the animate movement. So here we get, while a unit is moving, it is constantly sending a speed float value to this animation blueprint to tell this animation or this blueprint how fast we want the walk or run animation to go. If we take a look in the BP unit, let's see, so in core units and BP units, or wait a second, yeah, it should not be here because this has to do with animation, so it will be in the BP unit. Let's see, anim, there it is. We can see here, let's see, in the, yeah, on the, we're updating the movement function. This is in BP unit. Okay, let's go there anyway. So when we tell a unit to move, or when the animation system tells a unit to move, again, look at the action system tutorial if you have not done so already, if you want to understand this better. But we have this move action. It calls the animate movement function. The animate movement function, it then sets up some stuff and starts the move timeline. So when we start the move timeline, we have this timeline that keeps going, and every tick it updates movement until we have reached our destination. So when we are in unit anim here, getting the timeline move update function, which is this function going here, then this is running every tick while we are moving. So then every tick we are running the multicast move animation, and on multicast move animation we are inputting the current speed of this unit into a reference of the animation blueprint that we are using and calling the animate movement interface function, which is then every tick sent here, and we can use that for our animations. So that's how this works. Now for the animate ability, these are animations that are generally called, well, from abilities through unit blueprints and then to their animation blueprints. Again, look at the action system for an for a deeper explanation on this. But here we can see then, okay, so when our action system tells us to animate, oh, a new subscriber. Thanks, Kyle. Hope you see this video. And let's see. So when we get the hurt animation, then yeah, we set the speed to 0. We set a take damage boolean to true, and then we wait for a notify event from our hurt animation to then set take damage to false, so that we again go back to our regular animations, and then we call the end action to let the action system know that the action is over, and we can continue to whatever next action our action system has set up. There are similar things with the death animation, where we then set a boolean to true, and then through the animation graph, which we will look at later, setting death to true will mean that we play the death animation. In the death animation we have a notify called death end, and when this is called, or this is reached in the animation, we call this notify event, which then makes us then call the end action event again. And yeah, same with default. Default is set up now as you're attacking by default. If you're not asking for any other specific kind of action, we are doing an attack, but you can of course change this. But yeah, here the same general thing is going on, even though there's another thing set up here so that we set the rotation of this actor to face whatever it is attacking before we play the attack animation. That's the only extra thing that is going on here. But yeah, like I said, all of this is just enabling animation. We are not actually animating by doing any of this stuff yet, so let's get to that point. So for that we need to look at the animation graph, and at the moment we have no animation graph for this bear at all. So let's look what we want to build here. If we go to the ABP unit 1 and animation graph, we see that we have a state machine which result in whatever pose it is having. If we look at the state machine, it is fairly basic. We have a idle, walk, run here state, which is what it's doing by default, which is driven then by the speed variable which we input in the interface function I talked about earlier to determine if we should be standing idle, if we are walking, if we are running. And here we have these different transition rules. So here we can see if be death then is set to true, right, then we can enter the transition. So this is the default state we are in. And then if this death action is called, we set death to true, which means in our state machine, if we are here, which we should generally be, then this specific transition becomes true. Oops. Which means that we go to the death state. In the death state we play the death animation, and in the death animation we call the death end notify, which again brings us back to the notify, ending the action. Okay, I repeated a few times here, but hopefully that makes it clear what we're doing. But let's get our bear working. Well, that's a brand new sentence. Let's see. So let's just copy this state machine to have a starting point, get back to the bear, and paste it in. And this should not be working at all. If we compile, we get a lot of errors. But we have a starting point. So for the idle, walk, run, we were using here in ABP unit, we are using a blend space, which is BS ranged here. If we look at its animations, we can find BS ranged as one of them. Let's finally dismiss this one. Come on there. And blend space ranged, here we can drag this here so we can see when it is at 0. We are standing still and idle. When we are at like 200 speed, he is jogging along, and when he is at 600, he is sprinting. Let's see if our bear has some animations that allow us to do something similar. So in the animations, we have here a walk animation. That's a good starting point. Some nice moonwalking going on here, and we have an idle animation too. Unfortunately, the idle animation is pretty animated, so I think that if we create a blend space with these two, it's gonna look super weird. But yeah, let's do that anyway. So it's so you can see if you have some better animations to choose from, this is what you want to do. So let's take a new let's see, blend space, and this should be a one-dimensional blend space, since we're really only changing it along one dimension, which is the speed. So we make a new one, we base it on the bear, and we call it BS, let's see, bear walk idle. Okay, so now we have a blend space. It's not doing anything because we have no animation. So into this blend space we can drag, let's see, the idle animation. We want it to be idle when it's at 0, and we want it to be, let's see, walking. Ideally running, but we have no running animation, but walking when we are at then, I guess, well before we were at 600. At the moment this is just going from 0 to 100, and we are going from 0 to 600 by default. That's how the stuff is set up in BP unit. You can of course change that yourself, but that's yeah, moving 600 Unreal units per second, I think should be. So if you go to the horizontal axis here, we'll put the maximum value up to 600, and for this bear, let's see, we'll add some more divisions. We want to be walking already when we're at a fairly low value, I think. So let's see how this works now. So now we're, yes, this is 200 then? No, it's at 150, then we're walking. So first here we have idle, and we should be transitioning. Here we're walking, yeah. But in the middle here, there's, yeah, this doesn't really look like walking or idling or anything. So I think we're doing more of a sort of either we're playing the idle animation or we are walking. There's no point in having some weird transition between them. So we could always do this by like putting this walk all the way down to 1 or something, but it's not very elegant way of doing it. So let's try to set this up a bit differently. Instead of using then a blend space here, we'll delete this, and then we can base which animation that we're playing on a boolean, so which will result in an either or sort of thing. I think there's a function for this, yeah, blend poses by bool. So let's see. So, and then we need to get our speed, and if speed is greater than 0, we want to play our walk animation. If it is 0, we want to play our idle animation. So we plug this into here. So speed is greater than 0, then we do the true pose. And the true should then be walk, and false should be idle. And that should be enough. We still can't preview this as we've got a bunch of compile errors because of all the stuff that we copied. So let's just get that sorted. So we have the B death going into death here, and we're playing a death, and there's no such animation. So let's see what we have to work with. We got this one. It's kind of starting upright on this one. Okay, this is gonna look pretty wild, but let's try this one. Okay, so that was the death 2 of the bear, and did I get a warning? No. And for the attack, we need an attack animation. What do we have here? Oh, we have many to choose from. We got right hook, left hook. Okay, some smash. Let's start. Yeah, let's take this one. Either are fine. Okay, And finally, let's look at the take damage. So we don't have a hit animation. Let's see. And we are lucky because this bear also actually has that sort of animation. Even though it's backing away though, which might not work with our animations, but we'll see. React light front. Okay, now we're compiling, and now we can see that the preview is playing the idle animation. If we return to our, let's see, where's our bear? Yeah, that's the ABP unit bear, but the, let's see, the bear itself, BP unit bear, we've got him here, and we choose then our new bear animation blueprint, and he is animating, and this is great. So let's replace this guy. Let's put in our bear. I'm gonna change his initiative, oops, to something high so we know that we're starting. I don't know why I'm choosing 10. I could just as well choose 1 or yeah, 0.1, but yeah. So here he is, and let's see if he starts working, and he does. But I think we'll have the same issue as we did in the previous tutorial if we try to attack, where yeah, we're looping, and there's also a rifle here that we don't want. Let's just delete this weapon. The weapon is referenced in some of the abilities used in the advanced example map, the jungle raid map, but we're not using this in the default abilities anyway, so let's just delete this. You'd probably want to make your own abilities for this guy anyway. So yeah, but we will need to set up the notifies appropriately. So we got all of these animations, we got the state machine, so let's start with the attack animation here. We go to this, and we need to add the notifies. Let's figure out where we want them. Let's see. Okay. Oh, that's a very long paw. Okay. Okay. Let's put a notify here. Add a notify, skeleton notifies, and we have none. So we need to add them. As we copied over all of these things in the event graph, we should use the same names here, or we can make new ones, but let's keep it consistent. And this is for the attack, so we have the action hit and action end. That's what we're going to call them. So here we go for add notify, new notify, action hit, and then at the end we will add a action end. So do we need to compile now even? Let's see. Yeah, it's working. But when he's hitting us, we are looping. And that's another thing that I really should stress, is that all of the animations that are played for all of these various actions, they are not set up, they should not be set up to be looping generally. Or if you do, just be aware of what you're doing, because if we are looping an animation, so let's see, if this animation loops so that he hits, we want him to like hit 3 times before we go to the next or whatever, then we are, if we have this notify here and we're looping 3 times, we're calling for this action to end 3 times, which will send a message to the action system that we want to proceed to the next action 3 times in a row, which will generally cause the action system to skip over other actions that we have lined up in the queue and will cause all sorts of problems. So if you're setting up animations, make sure that they're just then calling, well, specifically that they're calling the end action event here only once, or you're gonna be in trouble. So let's see, if we look at the event graph, let's see, or the states, we should make sure that these animations are not looping. so that we don't run into these issues. Let's see, no looping. You can set up stuff to be looping, just then you need to set up how the end action event is called in a different sort of way. Let's see, so now none of the actions are looping, and that should be a lot better. Now let's just quickly do the same thing. Just add this notify at the end here, skeleton notify, action end for the death animation, and then for the react animation, there it is. Oops. Yeah. And everything should be working if we set this guy's health to be something low, so we can just take a couple of hits. And let's see. And this is working, and okay, that did not work. Yeah, okay, now we're stuck. Yeah, it makes sense. Because we should be using different notifies, of course. Now I use the action end, or the action end for everything, and of course we're always calling this part here and setting a tag to false, which will not bring us out of the hit animation. I'll leave this error into the tutorial, as it might be useful to see common mistakes. Let's see, so we want to use hit end and death end instead of action end. So let's do that super quick. Let's see. Yeah, now we're not playing the animation. We actually put this on the wrong animation anyway, so that would not have worked. Go to death 2, and I'm gonna put here a new notify, death end, and for the react here, I don't want action end, I want a new notify, hit end. Okay, now it should be working. Walking is good, hitting works, being hit, yeah, he slides back in, that's okay I guess, and there we are. Okay, so that's basically it, but let's do one more thing just to give an example of one possible way to modify the animation blueprint, which can hopefully give you some ideas. So since for this animation blueprint we have a lot of different melee animations to choose from, and it's kind of a waste to just use one of them. So let's have us like alternate between them, between every attack. So let's just start this time by adding the notifies. Let's see, so again the weird stretchy pause here, and now we can just add the notifies we already have. So yeah, action hit and action end. So the action end stuff, by the way, even though I'm calling this before the animation is ending, that doesn't mean that the animation is cut off. The animation keeps playing. This just means that it allows the action system to continue to the next action. So if you have the action end early, and you have another thing lined up, say the activation of the next unit in the initiative queue, then this animation will keep playing at the same time as the next unit is activated. Just so, yeah, there's a difference between ending an action and ending an animation, so which gives you some more control. And then we have this final attack. Let's see, slam, and it's around there. Or maybe it looks more impactful if it's the moment he hits the ground. Who knows? We're not making anything perfect here. Action hit and action end. So we have 3 different animations that are set up correctly. Now we need to set it up so that they can choose between them. So within the state machine here, for attack. There's not really any options for setting up like changing these booleans and so on, as far as I'm aware. Maybe you can do some randomization in here as well, but yeah, I haven't looked too much into that, but it's easy enough to set up here within the blueprint, and I think that's easier to control anyway. So like I mentioned, the default is what we're using for attack here. So let's add a new variable that keeps track of what animation we were using last. So this can be then, let's see, hit anim, or I mean attack anim index, and let's make it an integer. And then whenever we attack, we can set this to a new value, and we want to set it to a value between 0 and 2, since we have 3 different animations to choose from. So let's then get the current, whatever it was currently, we add 1, and we don't want to go beyond 2, so let's use a modulus here, so modulus 3, so when we go to 3 it will be set back to 0, and set this as the index. And then in the animation, see the blueprint, the event graph here, we want to choose between a few different ones. So again, we this time we don't want to use a boolean, since we're not just choosing between 2, we're choosing between 3 different ones. So I think it's blend poses by int, and let's see, the index we choose here, and we just have 2, so we need to add another one. Where is it? There, add blend pin. And then we can bring in our other, let's see, there. Okay, I won't mess with the blend times or anything like that. This should be fine. Let's up our health again so that we can survive a few hits, so that we can see all of these loop, and likewise increase the health of this guy. And now let's see. So we start then with a left hook, and then this is actually becomes the second attack, because we increment it from 0 to 1 the first attack we do. So this should be our standard attack at 0. There we are. And now we should be back to a left hook, and then the smash. Okay, let's just take this guy out. Wonderful. So that will be it for this tutorial. In the next one, I will look into how to set up a unit that doesn't use a skeletal mesh at all. Maybe you want to use like a static mesh if you're making like a spaceship or something, where a skeletal mesh might not make sense for animations. Or maybe you're making a 2D game where you're using a sprite instead, or something like that. So we'll look at different ways of then changing how an animated unit works to animate the unit in different ways than through an animation blueprint. That's it for this tutorial. See you in the next one.